All right, so this is the Frankenstein and You lecture. And so at the end of every major work, I kind of try to connect some of the things that go on in the book into your personal life and how you could actually use this as something with practical application. So we've talked a lot about the novel and everything that happens. And so taking everything that you know about the novel and how it ends, here's something you can think about as far as practical application. So we talk in this class a lot about oppositional forces. It's definitely something that you use to break down a poem or break down a piece of prose, because we know that oppositional forces create tension, and tension is what makes art. Okay, it's always about push and pull between two different things. One of the really important sets of oppositional forces in our reality is chaos and order. All right. And so there's a painting that you're looking at called Chaos. And when you hear the word chaos, you probably think of destruction. You probably think of a teacher's classroom where the teacher's not in control and there's like books thrown everywhere and pencils that are broken on the floor and kids falling out of desks. And that is a good definition of chaos. But there's also another way to think of it as just unformed matter. So looking at that painting, you notice that there's like human-like figures, but they're not quite developed. They're like proto humans, and then they kind of melt into mountains. This almost looks like the humans and the mountains are kind of combined and they're forming, and then you have the sky, and it's just, it seems like a depiction of kind of reality before it was truly formed. So you can think of chaos as just like uncomprised raw material. Now, in opposition to that, you have order. So you're looking at this structure and you have to think about the intense amount of skill and foresight it takes to build something like what's pictured. And you have to, well, first you need material that will build this structure. So you need steel, which I think you have to smelt and you have to dig up out of the earth and then run through the process of creating it. You have to transport it. And then you need engineers and architects in order to draw up plans to make sure that it can bear weight and that it can, withstand whatever the requirements of the building are. I mean, there's a lot of work and ingenuity that goes into the building of the structure that you see in front of you. So you can see how these two things are in opposition of just looking at those two pictures, you can see how those things are kind of opposites. Well, my argument to you is that your job as a human being is to process chaos, that you encounter chaos on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And just as a human being, it's your job to process that chaos. And you can process chaos in two different ways. Let me give you an example to show you that this is just a human instinct. If I brought you into my classroom, just you alone, and I put you in that desk right there, and I said, you have to sit there for 25 minutes and I will give you a $50 Amazon gift card if you sit there for 20 minutes and you can't be on your phone and you can't read anything. You pretty much just have to sit quietly and you're in the room alone. I'll be in here with you, but I'm not going to talk to you. I'm just going to be working on stuff and you're just going to sit in that seat. If you can sit and just chill for 20 minutes, I'll give you this $50 gift card, right? Pretty sweet deal. I'm sure all of you would be interested and I'm sure all of you could complete that task. But I'm going to put a box of matches on your desk and I'm going to spill all the matches out on the desk and leave you the box. So just like that picture with the watermark on it that I stole off the internet, just like that, those matches are going to be on your desk, all in disarray, and you also have the matchbox. I bet you anything at one point during the 20 minutes, just to entertain yourself, you will put all of those matches back in the box. Now, you might do other things. You might make designs. You might try to build something. You might put them in the box and take them out. But one of the things that you will do, I'm almost certain, if you have 20 minutes of just boredom, is you will put the matches back in the box. And you can disagree with me, but I feel like this is an indication that we as human beings just like things to be ordered. And when we see things that are disordered, we just have this instinct to order them. Like, I don't know how like tidy you guys are, but for me personally, if it's the evening and I'm going to just watch TV or I'm going to watch a baseball game or a hockey game, I have a really hard time relaxing until kind of things are picked up around me. Like I can't sit on the couch with a bunch of laundry next to me. I can't put my feet on a rug with a bunch of smashed up goldfish because my kids are crazy. I have to kind of pick up and clean up before I can really relax. So sure some of you agree with that. I'm sure some of you don't. Maybe that's not your experience, but I'm sure for many of you it is. So I'm going to give you two examples of people historically that are examples of chaos processors, but just about anyone of note, I would argue, is a good example. This is the gentleman, Levi. I forget his first name, but Levi built, he was the lead engineer on the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. And this is Madame Curie. She did a lot of groundbreaking experimentation in order to understand and develop radiology, which led to like improvements in cancer research and the curing of cancer and things to that effect. So they kind of process chaos in two different ways. So I would say with Levi, he saw this expanse of land and water, and he said, you know what, it's crazy, but I really think, it was 1930, I really think that we could build a bridge that spans this raw space, right? Because you guys know that this is the Pacific Ocean, and this is the bay where you get into San Francisco and Oakland, Emeryville. And he said, man, I really think we can do it. So he saw this raw, unformed land, and then he thought about all the raw, unformed metal that can be turned into these steel beams and these cables. And then he did a bunch of crazy math equations in order to figure out like how long the bridge could be and how high the supports and all this stuff that I don't understand. So he brought forth this bridge from the materials that were at hand. He's creating, and through his creation, he's bringing order out of chaos. And then it's different, but it's similar with Madame Curie. She did a bunch of scientific experiments, and she was looking at our world, and she was able to break it down into understandable pieces. She was able to classify it. She was able to figure out empirical properties about radium. And one of the things about the periodic table of elements is that it's very ordered, right? Everything is in a column, and the column has a purpose. Everything is grouped. Everything has a number. And it's a way of saying, look, you look out into the world, and it's kind of this really complex, difficult to understand scene. And through the periodic table of elements, we can break it down into pieces that are organized, into pieces that make sense, into pieces that can be written down and then transferred to the next generation of people and scientists. And so one is to create and bring order. One is to look at what is there and create order from something that's super complex and difficult to understand. Two different ways to bring order from chaos, but hopefully you kind of see where I'm going with this. Well, just as an experiment, look at these wonderful characters, and I'll ask you to pause my video and to rank those characters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which one is the top chaos processor and which ones are at the bottom? So think about which characters have the most ability to either create order through creation or through organization, and which ones are the least capable. So pause, make your rankings. All right, so you're back. We'll start from the bottom. Obviously, the baby and the minion are pretty low, right? Babies are cute and adorable, and they always like to put their little hands up to their ears like this for some reason, but they really can't do much. They can't design things. They can't build things. And minions are just kind of these bumbly characters. They don't even really speak a real language that we understand. They speak gibberish. And so they're not going to be the most capable chaos processors of all the characters. Then we have Miguel, who's kind of in the middle. He's kind of like an 11 or a 12-year-old kid, if you've seen the movie Coco. And, he's somewhere in the middle. Like, he could probably create some things that are useful, or he could probably categorize some things in a useful way. But when you really look at the top, it's going to be The Rock, and it's going to be Bo Peep, if you've seen San Andreas and Toy Story 3, respectively. These characters are what? They're intellectually sound. They have the possibility of solving problems creatively. They are compassionate. They are kind of fully developed characters, right? And so one of the things that human beings try to do is they try to develop more fully so that they can solve more complex problems, all right? So Bo Peep is trying to get, I think, Woody and Buzz reunited with Forky, right? If you've seen that movie, and she does all these really creative things to solve that problem and bring order back into the world of Toy Story. And then the Rock in San Andreas, there's been a gigantic earthquake, and very literally he's dealing with all the chaos, and he's looking at the scene and trying to figure out how to prioritize, organize, how to solve the problem, which is what, disaster workers do, is they look at the scene and there's a million different problems going on at once. What's the most important problem that I can solve first? And that's a lot of mental energy. That's a lot of ingenuity and talent to be able to interact with such a catastrophic scene and try to fix some of the problems that are present. So you may be asking, probably not, hey, I want to be like The Rock, or I want to be like Bo Peep. How can I increase my chaos processing power? Well, there's many, many ways. I'll give you 3 examples. One would be physically, right? And so I gave the example of like a Spartan race, if any of you have ever done that. It's just kind of the idea that you're doing, it's artificial, right? It's set up by a race organizer, but it's a physical challenge. And when you think about that, it's like, it's building your muscle for going out and creating something. I mean, think about all the people that built that Golden Gate Bridge, and just all the, sure, they had machinery, but all just the physical grit and the physical ability in order to be able to go out and build that bridge. The other example is mental. The puzzle, right? Puzzle is metaphorically bringing order to chaos, because you buy the puzzle and it's in a box, and then in the box is a bag, and in the bag are the pieces, and then you tear open the bag and it's just pieces everywhere, right? And some of them are border pieces, and some of them are internal pieces, and some of them go up here and some of them go down here. It's your job to take all that chaotic stuff, all those little cardboard pieces, and turn it into an actual cohesive picture, right? And then the last thing is a piece of sheet music. And if you just look at that, man, doesn't that look chaotic? It's all this stuff on the page. There's the lines, there's the numbers, there's the little squigglies, there's the swoopies, there's the carrots. There's just so much going on. But if you have leveled up your chaos processing score and you know how to read music, you know that there is treble clef and bass clef, you know that there's a time signature, you know that there are 16th notes and half notes, you know about legato and staccato, you know about all of the markings on that page. So it looks chaotic, but if you learn to read it, you can take just that mess of symbols on a page and you can turn it into actual music. And then you can play the actual piano, and then you can actually turn all of that nonsense on the page into beautiful music that people might even get married to, right? And so that's really bringing order to something chaotic, where it's like, to a majority of people, that's just nonsense written on a page. But you, if you have really trained yourself in the discipline of music, you can turn that into something, which is really quite amazing when you think about it. So to bring it back to Victor Frankenstein, it's like, how high was his chaos processing power score if he was on this chart? And I would say it's pretty darn high, right? He has some moral flaws. He's not a perfect character by any stretch of the imagination, but the dude stitched together a bunch of random parts and he created a living, breathing being. And the extent to which the being is human is debatable, but a being. And to think that he created like a cardiovascular system, right? He created muscles that could move. He created like bones that all fit together. Like he had to build the skeleton, and then he had to find a way to animate it through electricity. It's like, obviously this is fictional, what Mary Shelley's writing, but he's a character. So let's examine him as a character in fiction. It's like, this guy was really at the top of his game. Like he really could have done a lot of probably fantastic things for science. But here's the fundamental thing, and this is kind of the whole point of my my lecture, is that Frankenstein brought chaos from order. He was already in a very ordered place, right? He spends a lot of time in Geneva. If you know anything about Geneva, number one, it's the most beautiful place in the world, in my opinion. And number two, it's a very ordered place. Like it's very much like it's I don't think they've ever fought any wars in Switzerland. Switzerland always remains neutral to warfare. They've never had any major conflicts there. It's where the Geneva Convention is held, which is where all the other countries come together and they make decisions about world policy. So it's a very ordered place. It's a very expensive place too, just for the record. And it's like, I realize it might be a coincidence because when Shelley wrote Frankenstein, she was in Geneva. She happened to be in Geneva while she wrote it. So maybe she's like, look, I'm here. I might as well write a story about where I'm at. That's totally fair. But if you want to look at the environment or the setting as a function in the novel, it clearly, Geneva is the function of a very ordered place. And what does Frankenstein do in a very ordered place? He creates absolute chaos, right? He uses all of his scientific faculties and imagination in order to create something that he didn't have the foresight to know what was going to happen after he created this creature. So if you remember back to, it's like, why is this such a problem, right? Why is it such a problem for Frankenstein to want to bring, not want to, but to as a consequence of his actions bring chaos from order? It just totally goes against both the creation myths that we talked about in the class, right? So on one hand, you have Prometheus, and he created humans out of clay. And then when Zeus takes fire away from his creation, from the human beings that he created, he sacrifices himself to go back up on the mountaintop to the workshop of Hephaestus and bring down the fire and give it back to the people. And it's not clear in that story why he designed people, like for what purpose. However, we do know that Zeus wanted those human beings to just worship the gods, to just look up to the gods. And that was the whole purpose of creating humankind for Zeus, was just for them to kind of be stuck as a people, to be struggling as a people, and then they have to give up sacrifices to the gods. They have to thank the gods for the rain. They're kind of at the mercy of the gods. Zeus really liked that power dynamic. It's like, we're the gods, you're the humans, you're completely reliant on us. We don't want you to have any autonomy. And Prometheus came along and he said, no, 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 it's not going to be like that. I love my creation. I'm going to bring them fire. I'm going to give them this technology, and they're going to flourish. They're going to do better. They're going to evolve, and they're going to create new things, and they're going to make their lives better for themselves. So it's pretty clear that Prometheus wanted autonomy for his people, and he wanted them to prosper, to do better. And I think it can be inferred he wanted them to bring order into the world. He wanted them to create things that were useful. He wanted them to categorize the things that were out there to better understand the world, to maybe develop the scientific method, things like that. Then when we talk about the Garden of Eden and the story that's found in Paradise Lost, which is referenced, these are both references in the novel, because I'll just tell you this as a review. The title is Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus, and then one of the books that the monster reads is Paradise Lost, and the story of Adam and Eve is a big part of Paradise Lost. Even the title, Paradise, is Eden, and Lost is to be kicked out of the Garden of Eden. It's the story of Adam and Eve losing paradise, which is the Garden of Eden. In the video, we saw that humans were created to harness the potential around them and create beauty and order. So they were put in the garden for a purpose, and they were, I even think Adam is allowed to name the animals. I could be wrong about that. I'd have to look back, but to name the animals is an act of bringing order, right? It's to categorize things. It's to say, what's the difference between a cat and what's the difference between a lion? What's the difference between a tree and what's the difference between a bush, something like that. It's like, that's what human beings do. We figure out distinctions to say this is a this and this is a that. And that's really, really helpful, because then we can actually communicate. So for Victor to bring chaos out of order it's just so backwards. It's like one of the most backwards things that you can do. And you guys know that if I walked into a Target with a baseball bat and I just started smashing things, you'd be like, Jeffries, that's really screwed up, man. What's wrong with you? I mean, just through intuition, that to just go out and destroy things that have been created is just kind of, it's silly, it's icky, it's immature. But you got to remember, with Victor, he didn't commit an act of destruction. He committed an act of creation. But his act of creation was not of order. His act of creation was of, I guess, destruction. I mean, the creature kills his family. The creature ends up wanting to die himself at the end. So it's kind of this mishmash of things, because it is an act of creation, but it's creative destruction. So it's working on a number of levels. Well, let's talk about the price that Frankenstein pays for this. We know what Prometheus's punishment was, and we know that he takes his punishment with a smile because he loves his creation and he thinks that bringing them fire was worth the price that he pays. We know that Adam and Eve were punished, but it's not the end of the story. We know that God gives them the opportunity to reconcile, to fix the problem. And so in both creation stories, the creator is angry with their creation, or needs to pay a price for their creation, but they do it so willingly so that their creation can flourish, can be better, right? Well, you guys know that one of the reasons Frankenstein is punished so severely is that his motivations were wrong, right? He feels that a new species is going to bless him, and that no father in the history of fathers could claim the gratitude of his child so completely as I could deserve theirs. And he feels like that if he could, in time, renew life where death had apparently devoted the body to corruption, that he could earn this acclaim. Right. So we all know that his motivations were just misguided, that he was doing it for his own ego. He wanted to get on the map scientifically. And maybe if his goal in creating something was to build a superhero that would help defend Geneva against attackers, maybe he would have done better for himself. I mean, think about the creature. He's super strong. He's super fast. The cold can't really kill him. Heat can't really kill him. He's almost in a lot of ways indestructible. If Victor had said, look, I want to build something that is useful and not just something that would worship me, things could have ended up much differently. All right. And Mother Nature retaliates. So you want to think about, if Frankenstein is taking the role of Mother Nature, if he's taking the role of mother too, think about it. Naturally, mothers bear children, and Frankenstein is taking that responsibility. Mother Nature retaliates, and it definitely at the end of the novel, I'll read to you this passage. As I pursued my journey to the northward, the snows thickened and the cold increased in a degree almost too severe to support. The peasants were shut up in their hovels. Only a few of the most hardy ventured forth to seize the animals, whom starvation had forced from their hiding places to seek for prey. The rivers were covered with ice, and no fish could be procured, and thus I was cut off from my chief article of maintenance. The triumph of my enemy increased with the difficulty of my labors. One inscription that he left in the woods was, "Prepare, your toil only begins. Wrap yourself in furs and provide food, for we shall soon enter upon a journey where your sufferings will satisfy my everlasting hatred." So the creature is really able to retaliate and get back at Victor in a number of ways. And one of the ways that he retaliates is through actual Mother Nature, right? The creature leads Victor into the really harshest places of the world so that the snow and the ice and the temperature will really beat up on Victor. And, he's faced with starvation, or he's faced with, an inability to procure food. And so the price that Victor pays is very much it's very much a price that is given to him by the elements of Mother Nature. And the creature is using Mother Nature against Victor because Victor kind of tried to steal the role of Mother Nature. So it's a very apropos, it's a very appropriate punishment, because what Victor tried to take inappropriately is now coming back to him tenfold. All right. So what kind of lesson do we learn about Frankenstein? I think one thing is clearly it's important to maximize our chaos processing power. So whether it's physical or mental or musical or artistical, whatever, it's really cool in this book to see Walton and Victor really interested, obsessed with a field, right? And so for Walton, it's to get to the North Pole, it's to explore, it's to get to a landmass that has never been viewed by human eyes before. That's awesome. That's like going to the moon, right? And then, or the depths of the ocean. And then for Victor, he's trying to do something scientifically that has never been done before. And that's going to be your generation's role, is to go out and make new advances in science, and all the other fields in art and culture and all these other places, things that have never been done before. That's kind of just what humans do, right? But the problem is that he created a problem instead of solving one. So it's just like, if you think about the things that Victor could have accomplished in his time period to advance science or medicine or to do something that would have helped others, he could have taken all that potential and he could have applied it into a really positive way. Instead, he kind of just blindly created, and he was very much motivated by his ego. He was very much motivated by this idea that he would be blessed, that he would be worshipped, that he would be the favorite if he were able to accomplish this task. And unfortunately, when people are motivated by that, it just, the creation ends up having such a different effect on the world, right? And I know The Social Network is a film, and I know that there may not be any truth to it, but if you look at just that storyline, it's the same idea, where it's like Zuckerberg was not in that film trying to improve the world. The first thing he did was make some disgusting, compare college people on their attractiveness to get back at his ex-girlfriend. And then that idea just kind of grew and grew and grew into putting the college experience online. But it was never to make people's lives better, according to the film. It was just for Zuckerberg to aggrandize himself. So obviously, probably not a true story. But if you look at it as a piece of art and you compare it to this piece of art, you can definitely see some parallels. And then another thing I think to notice about Victor is just how isolated he was. Every time he worked on the monster, he was by himself. Every time that he moved further and further into the project, he became more and more anxious and bothered by it, but he never wanted to tell anyone. He never fessed up about Justine. If he had fessed up during Justine's trial, think of all of the ways that the problem could have been fixed. He might have even saved Elizabeth or Clerval. And so he just always was, he was the mad scientist keeping to himself. He never wanted to share. He never wanted to collaborate. So I think one of the big messages is, when you get really obsessed with a field, when you get really good in a field, it's really important to get other people's perspectives involved. It's important to do things as a group. It's important to have checks and balances, because there was no one there to talk Victor out of his decisions, and his bad decisions just compounded on themselves. They got worse and worse and worse. If he had been on a team, well, one, the creature probably would have been created in a very different way. And then two, when making the decision about whether to build the creature a mate or not, maybe there would have been a decision that was more wise. And so Victor would have really, really benefited from collaborating with other people. One, for his science and the things he creates, but then also for his own physical welfare. I mean, and emotional welfare. You can see that he's just always in his own isolation. He's always in his own world, and he really suffers for it. The extent to which he talks about the anxiety that he's suffering and his brain fever and just his night fits, and just, he's all torn up because he has this gigantic secret that he can't let out, and that really, really can destroy people. So go out, maximize your chaos processing power, and make sure to collaborate with others, get other people's input, lean on other people, let other people lean on you. It's a fundamental human virtue to be interconnected with others. All right. So I hope you enjoyed Frankenstein. Hope you got something out of it.